Chapter 2598, Group of Ancient Tombs. Chapter 2598, Group of Ancient Tombs. More and more people came here, not only ninth heaven celestial kings, but also the eighth heaven, seventh heaven, and even lower-level celestial kings. Everyone knew that the ninth heaven celestial kings had a great plan to level a dangerous place, wherein hid earth-shattering treasures that could even turn a celestial king into a heavenly venerate. Who was the first to spread this news? It could no longer be verified. However, it obviously had an amazing effect as it caused this area to be extremely crowded and filled with oceans of people. When there were too many people, conflicts would inevitably arise. Furthermore, there were no rules in the Celestial King graveyard. Killing people was a very common thing. Bloody battles occurred on a daily basis. In fact, even large-scale team battles would burst out. The Empress and Bewitching Maiden Rue disguised themselves to participate in many team battles since it would not be conducive for their growth to always work in seclusion. They were unlike Little Terror. Its combat abilities had been instinctively ingrained, similar to a war soldier's. Exactly 10 million years passed, and this swamp was finally about to be leveled. The celestial kings from all corners gathered around it. Although the area was still astonishingly large, the swamp was only about 1.5 kilometers in size. There was a piece of land just ahead, but with the thickening mist, it could not be seen very clearly. All the celestial kings were very excited as they had finally completely emptied the swamp after another day's work, and now they could proceed unobstructed. When they stepped onto this piece of dry land, the fog dissipated, and they could see things within a 0.5 kilometers range. They saw that there were a few large graves erected sporadically around the area. Going by this calculation, there should be more large graves after the fog. The total number would be absolutely staggering. These tombs were enormous. The tombstones alone measured up to 300 meters in height, and the burial mound itself was like a hill, exuding a strong oppressive, menacing feeling. There were so many tombs. Which one was the ancient tomb? Everyone, the ancient tomb is in the centermost area. We need everyone to work together to clear a path towards Ithia. Are still some minor hurdles here. Desolate Moon appeared, and stood at the forefront. Friend Desolate Moon, please lead the way, everyone said. Those who are willing to follow my lead to the ancient tomb can come along with me. However, there are opportunities in every tomb here the young ones may wish to explore, Desolate Moon said. Where there are opportunities, there will also be dangers lurking. Make sure to stay alert and proceed with caution. Everyone was taken by surprise. Desolate Moon's strength was absolutely incomparable, and yet he showed such hesitation. It simply wasn't the way an elite would normally behave. This person was absolutely too mysterious. After speaking, Desolate Moon strode forward, while a large number of 9 heavenly celestial kings looked at each other, and began trailing behind him. No one believed that Desolate Moon could have set a trap, because who could have managed to pass through such a terrifying swamp? Even if Desolate Moon had any malicious intention, he could only use what was originally laid out here to target them. Therefore, the safest way would actually be to follow Desolate Moon. With so many ninth heaven celestial kings working together, even a first-tier heavenly venerate would feel trepidation. Besides, should Desolate Moon be telling the truth, and the remaining 6 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll were really hidden here, then they needed to follow him all the more. The crowd of ninth heaven celestial kings left, but told the rest to be cautious, and not get involved in conflicts rashly. There were too many second-generation young masters here, all of them short-tempered and arrogant. Should a fight break out, neither side would let up until they fought to the death. Brother Long, what should we do? Zhao Shuang asked Ling Han in a low voice. His life was in Ling Han's hands, and that had dissipated all his temper long ago. Ling Han's reply came with a sweeping glance. I naturally want to go into those ancient tombs and take a look. There wouldn't be any good prospects in following Desolate Moon. With so many ninth heaven celestial kings around, Ling Han wouldn't even be able to get any leftovers. However, if Desolate Moon was telling the truth, and there were indeed opportunities in the other ancient tombs, then Ling Han might as well try his luck there. After 10 million years, not only had Ling Han advanced his cultivation to the peak stage of the 4th heaven, He had also completely mastered and merged the 3 parts of the 9 transformations divine scrolls. His battle prowess had naturally improved further as well. Ling Han was confident that as long as a 9th Heaven Celestial King didn't make a move, even 8th Heaven Celestial Kings wouldn't be able to stop him. Of course, he still would not be able to defeat such an opponent hadn't reached that monstrous level of power necessary to be able to overlook the power gap of 4 whole cultivation levels. However, as long as I advance into the 5th heaven and add the divine demon sword, I can definitely fight equally against an 8th Heaven Celestial King one. Even if 9th Heaven Celestial Kings decide to make a move, I will still be able to escape easily. Ling Han smiled. After so many years, he was finally about to reach the pinnacle in terms of regulations, reaching the strongest level in the traditional sense. "Follow me," said the Yin River Celestial King. As soon as the 9th Heaven Celestial Kings had left the scene, he was the undisputed leader of the younger generation. Yang Xiaoling had no objection, and when Zhao Shuang saw that Ling Han also had no objection, he naturally would not be objecting, either. Let's go then. Chapter 2599, Defeated in 10 Strikes. Chapter 2599, Defeated in 10 Strikes. When Wang Dongsun's words fell, a 6th Heaven Celestial King walked out. The Yin River Celestial King immediately frowned. Aside from himself, the strongest in their group were 3 4th Heaven Celestial Kings, and they were Ling Han, Yuan, and Yang Xiaoling, respectively. It was impossible that any of the 3 of them could be a match for He Yi. Could it be that he would have to fight in the very first battle? But if he did not step out, that would only result in horrible defeat. He stepped out. "I alone am enough." He bared his teeth in a grin. "If you can withstand 10 strikes from me, I'll count it as your win." The Yin River Celestial King almost exploded in fury. "I am a 7th Heaven Celestial King monarch tier, and you are but at the 6th heaven. Now you're actually saying that you will defeat me in 10 strikes. Where did you get this courage and confidence from?" He calmed down abruptly, and stated calmly, "Fine then. I really wish to see how you will defeat me within 10 strikes." He Yi clasped his hands behind his back. "Easily. Absolute nonsense." The Yin River Celestial King moved, launching an offensive at He Yi. He Yi smiled slightly, and moved to counterattack. It was clear that he was inferior by a cultivation level, yet was completely unafraid of battling the Yin River Celestial King. Peng! The 2 of them exchanged a blow. At the same time, their bodies shuddered before taking a few steps back. Ting, ting, ting. They both took 7 steps back before they steadied their footing again. Their exchange had actually resulted in a tie. This. On the side of Ghost King City, everyone looked shocked. This was inconceivable. A 6th Heaven Celestial King actually did not fall into a disadvantage in a clash with a 7th Heaven Celestial King. It should be known that the Yin River Celestial King was also a monarch tier at that. Zhao Shuang couldn't help but turn to look towards Ling Han. Aside from Ling Han, there actually were other such monstrous freaks. The Yin River Celestial King's expression was cool. "You do indeed have some slight strength, but don't even think of being capable of defeating me within 10 strikes. Oh, then let's put it to the test." He continued to move. With him tapping out a finger, boundless brilliance dazzled their eyes. Yi, the 9 transformations divine scroll. Everyone felt a familiar wave. By now, there was practically no one that did not cultivate the 9 transformations divine scroll, but the advancement of every single person was completely different. There were some dumb and rash people that had not managed to master even a single part of the divine scroll, but those with good aptitude had completed this step. Monarch tier elites were already cultivating the second part, and had even begun to meld the 2 parts together. Yet the might of this blow from He Yi had far surpassed the level of having fused 2 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll together, and was of the strength of having fused all 3 parts together. What kind of aptitude was this? This was really too astonishing. Even the Yin River Celestial King's expression shifted. He was a monarch tier, but he was still in the midst of fusing the 2 parts of 9 transformations divine scroll, yet not only had the other party completed this step, he had even fused all 3 parts of the divine scroll into one. In comparison, the Yin River was basically trash. He was internally stunned, yet forcefully suppressed this shock. So what about it? He still had the advantage of a single cultivation level, after all. How could this gap be so easily compensated? 3 yin tap. With a light exclamation, his index, middle, and ring fingers formed a strange gesture, and stabbed towards He Yi. There was a black shadowy light entwined around the 3 fingers, bearing a cold feeling of eeriness. This was a powerful move, and had been further boosted with the 9 transformations divine scroll, so its might was increased. Peng! The 2 of them exchanged another blow, but they were still both sent backwards. It was hard to determine who was stronger between the 2 of them. He exclaimed lightly, and his figure flashed. Waving both fists in fury, he exuded a grand and magnificent feeling. It was clear that his battle prowess was equal to the Yin River Celestial King's, but the aura he exuded was incredibly domineering, as if he could crush the Yin River Celestial King. This was an incomparable confidence, and it was that unreasonable, overwhelming his opponent in terms of presence. Everyone was sure that if this was a battle of equal cultivation levels, He Yi would definitely be capable of defeating the Yin River Celestial King within 10 strikes, but if there was a gap of a single cultivation level, how could this be achieved? 3 strikes, 4, 5. The 2 of them battled intensely. He Yi indeed had a slight advantage, but to speak of defeating the Yin River Celestial King in the next few strikes, this was still too far away. 8 strikes, 9, and there was only 1 strike left. He suddenly shouted loudly, and his whole person suddenly shrank greatly, but one of his fists became bigger many times over. It was enshrouded in green light, with multiple seals flickering within. His aura suddenly soared to an unmatchable height. He threw out this punch, which descended harshly. Peng! A loud bang rang out, and the Yin River Celestial King was visibly sent flying. He opened his mouth, and a gust of blood spurted out. He forcefully turned himself around, and landed on the ground. His feet stood steady, but his figure was trembling slightly. His whole face had instantly turned completely red, and there was actually blood seeping from the corners of his eyes. This was due to his having forcefully suppressed the blood that had been about to escape from his mouth, but the impact that he sustained was really too great. It was actually flowing out of his eyes, and this made the situation become even more frightening. Though the Yin River Celestial King was still standing, and could still fight, everyone was aware that he had already lost. True enough, defeat in 10 strikes. He took a deep breath as well. In the last strike, he had used an ultimate move. Though he had defeated the Yin River Celestial King, to him, it was also an extremely great depletion. There was no way he could use it continuously. With this inhalation of air, his body also puffed up, as if his body was being inflated with air. You really can't withstand a single blow. Wang Dongsen laughed loudly, seeming extremely proud. The people from Ghost King City could say nothing in response. What else could be done when one had inferior skills? If it really came down to a battle, they would only be facing a one-sided massacre. Ling Han did not interfere. What did this have to do with him? He swept an eye over the masses, and then pointed a finger at one person. You, tell me about that Li Long, and not the slightest bit should be hidden from me. That person adhered to the Yin River Celestial King, and was a second heaven Celestial King. Though he very much wanted to stay stubborn, and put on a fine performance of loyalty in front of his master, when he saw that cold, expressionless face of He Yi, his heart jolted. Hurriedly, he blurted out all he knew about the topic. He Yi humphed. Pa, he sent out a palm strike, and killed that person with brute force. Knowing nothing, what use are you? You, the Yin River Celestial King was infuriated, and tossed a glare at him. Do you, too, want to die? He Yi's eyes were menacing, the gaze he directed at Yin River Celestial Chi filled with killing intent. The Yin River Celestial King clenched his fists tightly, but still withheld himself from exploding in fury. To say nothing of the fact that there were still 2 6th Heaven Celestial Kings here, as long as He Yi joined forces with Wang Dongsen, they would be able to kill him in a short while. He could choose to flee, but if so, what was the point of putting up a brave front at this moment? Let's go. Wang Dongsen waved a hand, and they walked towards the ancient tomb first. Only when they had all disappeared did everyone finally sigh in relief. They could feel a cold sweat covering their entire bodies. Just now, they had really been a line away from death. If it had really resulted in a battle, then most likely everyone else aside from the Yin River Celestial King and Ayuan would have had to die. "Are we still going in?" someone asked. "We are." The Yin River Celestial King squeezed out through clenched teeth. "Though our strength is inferior to the other parties, when contending for fated opportunities inside an ancient site, it is not just pure strength that means that you will be the one who has the last laugh." He could not swallow this grudge. Since he could not match the other party, they would just have to defeat them in terms of contending for the treasures. Everyone felt uneasy, but since the Yin River Celestial King had spoken, they could only obey him. Otherwise, given they were all just second heaven or third heaven celestial kings, they would only be bullied here without the protection of the Yin River Celestial King. "Humph, what is there to fear?" the Yin River Celestial King remarked in displeasure, and led the way forwards. Ling Han was filled with enthusiasm, and walked on after him. Chapter 2600 Entering the Tomb. Chapter 2600 Entering the Tomb. The others followed suit, and entered the ancient tomb as well. Though this burial mound looked like a hill from the outside, the passageway inside was only wide enough for around 5 people to pass through at the same time. Its height was around 3 meters, with stairs that led all the way down. This was clearly a hill-like burial mound, but why were the stairs going downwards? Everyone did not know what the reason was. In any case, this staircase was designed just like this, and their only option was to just walk onwards. It was very dark here, but it did not affect their visibility. As long as there weren't any unique regulations in place, pure darkness had completely no effect on celestial kings. There were a particularly large number of turns here. The staircase was only about 30 meters long at most, and then it was the end. They had to take a turn and continue downwards. After walking for a while, they suddenly stopped, and saw traces of blood on the ground. "Celestial King blood," they immediately said. Celestial King blood was too unique, bearing a unique kind of pressure. Celestial Kings naturally could distinguish it with a single glance. A battle had taken place here, and a Celestial King had bled. Immediately, a strong feeling of alertness rose up in them. Had the Celestial King wounded here been attacked by someone else, or by something here? Inside an ancient tomb, it was possible that there were traps, formations, and monsters. If you were careless and rash in here, there would be no point in blaming others even if you really did die. You were purely asking for it. A few more turns later, there were more and more smears of blood on the ground. In fact, there were even cut-off limbs. The scene was extremely bloody. Ling Han stopped, and picked up a few strands of black hair. This hair was very coarse, and definitely did not belong to a human. The Yin River Celestial King stopped suddenly, and said very impatiently, "Don't just stand around there. Let's go quickly." In the first place, he was already angered, and now Ling Han was actually loitering around here, which displeased him greatly. "What's so interesting about it? Isn't it just a few strands of hair?" a Celestial King asked. This was one of the Yin River Celestial King's lackeys. Since his master was angered now, he naturally had to take the chance to perform. "Don't think that you have discovered some kind of clue. There are many beast-type Celestial Kings," another Celestial King said. Ling Han ignored them, and merely looked at the black hairs in his hands. They gave him a very strange feeling. "I was talking to you." The 2 Celestial Kings that had previously rebuked him moved at the same time, grabbing out at Ling Han. Ling Han casually pressed down a hand. Peng, peng, the 2 of them were sent flying backwards, crashing heavily into the wall. Instantly, blood spurted madly from their mouths as half the bones in their bodies were shattered. "How dare you!" the Yin River Celestial King immediately shouted. Ling Han was nothing but one of Zhao Shuang's lackeys, and he actually dared to attack his people. This was too outrageously bold. "This way," someone suddenly called out, his tone filled with slight urgency. Everyone walked ahead, and saw that a small platform appeared ahead of a few steps on the staircase. There were strange seals drawn on the ground, and it seemed like a formation. Dead bodies lay all over this place. Actually, not many people had died, but this platform itself was not very large. Hence, now that there were 5 or 6 corpses lying around, especially when they had been ripped into pieces that were scattered here and there, they covered the whole platform entirely. Aside from this, there was also a bear-like monster. It was completely covered in black fur, and even had tentacles. It looked extremely disgusting. These are the people who had entered this place the earliest. The Yin River Celestial King did not have the time to call Ling Han to accounts. He frowned. Though he had only seen these people once, with the memory of a celestial king, he naturally would not forget anything or anyone he had seen before. They encountered this monster, then after sacrificing the lives of a few people, they still managed to kill it. Yang Xiaoling also analyzed from the sidelines. Ling Han tossed out the black hairs in his hands, and they just happened to land beside that monster. In comparison, one would realize that these black hairs had definitely come from this monster. The battle was extremely intense. However, though we entered very late, our delay was also limited, yet already so many people have died here. This monster should be very vicious. With an ambush, it wounded one person, then it continued to retreat as it fought, and the great battle only took place here. After killing these people, it also killed itself. Everyone made their deductions, and had just about reconstructed the truth of the matter. Where did this monster pop out from? Zhao Shuang asked, his voice shaking. He was but a second heaven celestial king. If he encountered a sudden attack from this kind of monster, wouldn't he be just simply killed? We are not the first group. The ambushes that lie ahead should have already been activated, the Yin River Celestial King said. Entering later had its benefits as well, for there would be people who entered earlier helping them to avoid the traps ahead. He glanced at Ling Han, and did not continue to flip out. This place was already exuding an air of great danger, so it was not appropriate to cause internal strife at this point in time. It would not be too late to deal with this person in the future. Follow me, and be careful. He led the way ahead, and everyone followed behind him. It was very dark and dead silent in here. Whether it was their breathing or their footsteps, only the slightest effort could cause a very large sound. They continued to make turns endlessly. Not too long later, they discovered traces of another battle. Dismembered limbs lay all over, and they discovered the corpse of another black-furred bear monster not too far ahead. Near here, there was another small platform, and there were formation patterns drawn on it as well. However, none of them could recognize what it was. It seems like the appearance of this kind of monster is related to this platform. None of them were stupid, and they immediately came to this deduction. They continued to advance, and true enough, the third place where a battle had taken place was still nearby a platform. Some of them wanted to give up. It was too dangerous here, and even celestial kings had bled. They did not feel safe at all. They were all second-generation young masters, and knew how to contend with each other for their pride, but they had a greater fear of death. Who among them had really suffered before, and how many of them would truly have roamed the border between life and death before? Yet the Yin River Celestial King did not agree. He was filled with enthusiasm, determined to find the fated opportunity here. After walking for a while longer, they came to another small platform after a turn, but there were staircases heading downwards on either side of the small platform. In other words, there was now a fork in the path. Everyone looked towards the Yin River Celestial King to see what he would say. We go right. He chose a path. They went through the stairway on the right, and there was another fork in the path not long after. We'll take right again, the Yin River Celestial King squeezed out through clenched teeth. Forks in the path appeared endlessly, as if this was a labyrinth. However, everyone did not feel any changes in space. Thus, it should be that this was just a situation wherein there were a lot of forked paths, and not a genuine labyrinth. Otherwise, that would be too easy to break through. After a considerably long time, they finally reached the end. A burial chamber appeared here, and compared with the small hill-like burial mounds outside, it was pitifully small, but it was still the size of an average house. Right in the center of the burial chamber, there lay a stone casket. There wasn't the slightest bit of dust on this casket. Could it be that we have just bumped into the fated opportunity like this? Everyone exclaimed in shock. Ordinarily, if there were any opportunities inside a burial chamber, that would definitely have to be funerary objects. Those definitely had to be located inside the coffin. "We open the casket," the Yin River Celestial King declared without any hesitation. To them, a dead Celestial King would also be fertilizer, so how could they possibly have any reservations about disturbing the dead? "I'll do it." A second Heaven Celestial King leaped out, immediately going to open the casket. He had just laid his hand on the casket when whong, the whole stone casket suddenly shone. A seal lit up, blasting towards that Celestial King. "Suppress!" that second Heaven Celestial King roared, throwing a punch to meet the blast of the seal. Peng! The might of this seal was extraordinarily great. With a single strike, that second Heaven Celestial King was sent flying, and he crashed heavily into the wall. A fountain of bloody mist gushed out, and he fell from the wall. In an instant, he had become extremely weak. Chapter 2601 Opening the Casket. Chapter 2601 Opening the Casket. "There are restrictions," Zhao Shuang exclaimed. These naturally were pointless words. How could it be that it was a ghost that had attacked the man? The others could only muse inwardly due to their reservations regarding Zhao Shuang's identity, but the Yin River Celestial King and Yang Xiaoling both tossed a disdainful glance at Zhao Shuang. "You really are too cowardly. How humiliating." Zhao Shuang was completely unconcerned. After falling into submission to Ling Han, he no longer wanted any pride. It was enough for him to keep living. The restrictions are quite powerful too. The Yin River Celestial King walked forwards. "Let me try." He, too, stretched out a hand to touch it. Whong, the casket lit up with magnificent brilliance once more, and it manifested into a seal that blasted towards the Yin River Celestial King. Peng! He took this blow head-on, and couldn't help but take a number of steps back, his expression appearing slightly ugly. Everyone now had a definite understanding of how powerful the restrictions were. The Yin River Celestial King could take the restrictions head-on, but it was also extremely straining for him. "We cannot apply brute force," the Yin River Celestial King said. Everyone nodded in agreement. There were no prospects for applying brute force at all. But this also convinced them that there were definitely treasures concealed within this casket. Everyone gathered around, studying it closely. Restrictions were a branch off from formations, and to put it simply, formations were a manifestation of regulations. Thus, to celestial kings, there were no formations that could not be broken through in this world. The only difference was how much time it would take. They were very rushed. Though they were the first to find this place, it did not mean that others would not come here. But in truth, a very long period of time had already passed, yet still no other people appeared, which seemed quite strange. Ling Han was also studying the restriction. Though he was only in the fourth heaven, his mastery of regulations was not inferior to that of the Yin River Celestial King at all. Otherwise, Ling Han's battle prowess could not possibly have been so strong, either. Additionally, he had also learned something else from Worley, to look at a problem from a different angle, and his rate of solving the problem would be faster with the combination of two angles. Otherwise, he would not have just used half a year's time previously to break through the restrictions laid down by the Azure Ghost Celestial King. Ling Han exerted time acceleration effects on himself. This was an ability that 99% of Celestial Kings could not possibly be equipped with. It was equivalent to him being 1,000 times faster than everyone else. Hence, only a day later, Ling Han had come to a conclusion. He moved, and pressed down a hand on the casket. Scram! The Yin River Celestial King moved. He was filled with displeasure. He was presently trying to break through the formations, yet Ling Han actually dared to disturb him. This really was outrageously bold. He thought too highly of himself. Ling Han clenched a fist and parried the blow. Peng, the power of the two clashed together, and instantly activated the restrictions of the casket. A ray of light shot out, splitting into two streaks which blasted towards Ling Han and the Yin River Celestial King, respectively. Peng, peng. Both Ling Han and the Yin River Celestial King were sent flying backwards by the restrictions. Everyone was greatly shocked. It was not surprising to be sent flying by the restrictions. What was surprising was how Ling Han had not been at a disadvantage when he had exchanged blows with the Yin River Celestial King previously. This was too inconceivable. What kind of monster was he? He could suppress the Yin River Celestial King, but he was at least a 6th Heaven Celestial King. You, a 4th Heaven Celestial King? Even if you have reached the peak stage, this is still extremely ridiculous, and cannot be believed. This person. Could it be that he was even more freakish than he Yi? Yuan looked at Ling Han, a sliver of change taking place in his expression. His gaze also flickered, revealing fighting spirit. The Yin River Celestial King's expression wavered. He stared at Ling Han, his heart filled with shock and extreme disbelief. Just what kind of monster was this? Yet Ling Han did not continue to make a move. He walked forwards, and began to break through the restrictions. These restrictions were not too complicated. Thus, he only took a short while to break through them. Then, the lid of the casket was lifted by his hand. At this moment, everyone could not be concerned about anything else. They all gathered around, stretching out their heads to look. There was a corpse that lay within the casket. It had long since turned to bone, and it was dressed in a suit of armor. However, obvious wounds could still be seen. A number of holes had been torn in the armor, and the bones that corresponded to these holes had also shattered. He should not have died by the immortal's tribulation, but should have rather been killed by an external force. His palms lay crossed upon his chest, and a sword lay beside him. This was a very long sword, and had no sheath. Though his corpse was already corroded, this sword was still glinting brightly. Though it was already broken into halves, it was exuding an incomparable chill. Aside from this, there was nothing else in the casket. Everyone was incredibly disappointed. Where were the treasures they were anticipating? Though this sword looked to be very sharp, it was definitely no celestial tool. Furthermore, it was broken, which made it even more meaningless. After exerting such great effort, all of that was for the sake of a look at this dead body? Who would be so idle to lay down such restrictions on the casket? Wouldn't they just be playing around? Let's go. The Yin River Celestial King humphed. He finally knew that his good luck was really not that good, and the reason why no one had come all this while was probably because there were no small number of such caskets. Everyone was busy breaking through the restrictions. Perhaps one of these caskets really did contain treasure. Chapter 2602 Elites Working Together. Chapter 2602 Elites Working Together. Previously, though Ling Han had been able to exchange blows with him once without falling into a disadvantage, that was because the Yin River had not used full power at all. Was there any need for him to use full power against a puny 4th Heaven Celestial King? Since Ling Han dared to challenge the Yin River, then he could just die. The Yin River Celestial King strode towards Ling Han. As he did, a black liquid was also flowing from within his body, intertwining on the ground and forming a web-like shape. Zhao Shuang was anxious, and hurriedly said, "We are all together. Whatever it is, we can talk it over peacefully. Just talk it over peacefully." If the Yin River Celestial King killed Ling Han, Zhao Shuang would not have any more antidote. In that case, Zhao Shuang would definitely die as well. But if Ling Han killed the Yin River Celestial King, then Zhao Shuang would have allowed his subordinate to commit the crime of actually daring to touch even the beloved disciple of the Azure Ghost Celestial King, and even Zhao Yuanyi would not be able to save him. Hence, what Zhao Shuang wanted the least was for the two of them to get into a fight. How could the Yin River Celestial King possibly take heed of him? He was determined to kill Ling Han. Previously, how the people from Prosperous Opening City had provoked him had already angered him greatly, yet he had no means to vent this fury. Now, even his own subordinate dared to leap out and publicly challenge his authority. How could he tolerate this? Kill, he definitely had to kill him. He moved. Wang, wang, wang. He shot out a palm strike, with 7 black seals solidifying, and he pressed them down on Ling Han. Boom, the liquid on the ground floated, solidified while maintaining a web-like shape, and became akin to a prison that trapped Ling Han within. Ling Han clenched his right hand into a fist, and punched out at empty air. A loud bang rang out, and the black liquid instantly collapsed. The prison crumbled. With a long whistle, Ling Han pushed forwards this fist to continue blasting towards the Yin River Celestial King. Peng! The two of them exchanged another blow, and Ling Han was immediately sent flying backwards. Meanwhile, the Yin River Celestial King clearly had the upper hand in terms of power. He was standing firmly, but his palm had already split apart, blood seeping from it. Looking back on Ling Han, the latter was completely unscathed. This meant that it was indeed the Yin River Celestial King that had the upper hand in terms of power, but it was Ling Han that was slightly superior in terms of destructive power. With this +1 and -1, it was hard to determine who had stronger battle prowess out of the two of them. One could only say that they each had their advantage, and this was a battle wherein the result was hard to predict. 9 transformations divine scroll, everyone exclaimed in shock. That previous blow from Ling Han had used the 9 transformations divine scroll, which boosted its destructive power, and that was how he had managed to wound the Yin River Celestial King with a single strike. Though it could not be considered even light injury, that was not because the 9 transformations divine scroll did not have enough might, but rather because the gap in cultivation levels between the two was too wide. He has fused all 3 parts. This was what caused them the most shock. As it turned out, it was not He Yi that was the only such monster. It had only been 10 million years, and Ling Han had already fused the 3 parts of 9 transformations divine scroll. This was too terrifying. Who exactly are you? The Yin River Celestial King asked darkly. He did not believe that there would be so many freaks in this world, and it was always he that encountered them. Could it be? A name appeared in his mind. But even he did not dare believe it. This was really too outrageously bold, wasn't it? Ling Han broke into a grin, and dragged a hand down his face, revealing another face. Do you recognize me now? He asked. Li Long, everyone exclaimed in shock. This face was too familiar. Ling Han grinned. His features shifted, and he turned back to his previous appearance. Damn it, the Yin River Celestial King roared in fury. He moved once more, drawing from the regulations of water, and forming a black-colored spear, which he stabbed towards Ling Han. Flowing waters form my spear, penetrating all defense in this world. Ling Han had no intention to draw the divine demon sword. Previously, in the battle with the Yin River Celestial King, he had only been in the early stage of the 4th heaven, yet now he had attained peak stage. Moreover, he had also cultivated the 9 transformations divine scroll, which had further increased his battle prowess. Now, he should possess the strength to battle a 7th heaven monarch tier, right? Ling Han raised his fist, and launched an assault against the Yin River Celestial King. Peng! 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 A great battle broke out between them. The space inside here was narrow and cramped. The moment they started fighting, the shock waves from their clash surged in all directions, which was extremely frightening, forcing Zhao Shuang and the others to have no choice but to retreat continuously. They were not even qualified to watch the battle from close quarters. Only Yuan was standing nearby. His eyes were burning brightly, and his hand was already involuntarily gripping his sword. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, Ling Han was the only one who had ever defeated him, and this caused his fighting spirit to blaze. He very much wanted to defeat Ling Han so he could prove that he was the true strongest prodigy of this era. Ling Han had no other thoughts in his head. His only thought was to battle. The Yin River Celestial King did not know why Ling Han did not draw the divine demon sword, but this naturally was more in line with his wishes. Otherwise, he was sure that he would definitely be no match for Ling Han. In the last battle, he had fought Ling Han to a tie. Actually, this made him feel very sullen. His battle prowess definitely surpassed Ling Han's. In fact, he overwhelmed the latter completely, but just because he lacked a celestial tool, he was forced to accept a tie as the result. Now Ling Han actually chose not to use his celestial tool due to his pride. Then, he could blame no one if he was seeking death like this. The Yin River unleashed his full battle prowess, wanting to force Ling Han to the point that the latter wouldn't even have the chance to draw the divine demon sword. Battle, 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 battle. The two of them unleashed their full battle prowess, fighting an extremely intense battle, and it was hard to decide who was stronger between them. Ling Han couldn't help but admit that a 7th heaven monarch tier was still very strong. Without using the divine demon sword, he would also be able to fight the other to a tie, but to completely suppress him? That was simply impossible. Right at this moment, a flash of sword light streaked past, slicing out towards Ling Han. Yuan had made his move. He was definitely not a despicable character that would take advantage of others, but rather he had no concept of rules at all. Since his fighting spirit was blazing hotly, then he would just attack. As for a fair one-on-one battle, this kind of concept had never existed in his mind. He would not object to others ganging up on him, and now that he was working together with the Yin River Celestial King to fight Ling Han together, he would not feel the slightest bit apologetic, either. Now that Yuan had joined the battle, the pressure Ling Han was under instantly soared. Yuan was a monarch star, and a supreme monarch star at that. His evolution index soared directly to 11. This meant that his natural talent in cultivation was astonishing. That was clear from the moment he attacked. He had fused all 3 parts of the 9 transformations divine scroll together. This had even surpassed the majority of 9th heaven celestial kings. With the boost of a heavenly venerable tier technique, the might of his sword technique was extremely frightening. Thankfully, he had only obtained 3 parts of the divine scroll after all. While that was still strong, it had not reached a level that could not be matched. Ling Han was unafraid. On the other hand, his heroic spirit and excitement burst out. Regulations entwined his fists as he clashed fiercely with the 2 great elites. But no matter how strong and fierce human power was, there was still a limit. The combined might of Yuan and the Yin River Celestial King had already surpassed Ling Han's limit, suppressing him gradually, and he had fallen completely into a disadvantage. Though they had the upper hand, the Yin River Celestial King did not look to be very happy, because he was feeling a tremendous amount of pressure. Ling Han, He Yi, Yuan, all of them had natural talent that crushed his. Previously, he had been self-content and smug. He was an extremely rare monarch tier of Ghost King City, but now with this comparison, he was practically trash. Yuan's natural talent in cultivation was indeed awesome. After being defeated by Ling Han, he did not become despondent and lose his fighting spirit. Instead, he learned from the lesson, and compensated for his own shortcomings. His battle prowess had become even more terrifying than before. Furthermore, he had also reached the peak stage of the 4th heaven, and his rate of advancement was not much slower than Ling Han's. The 2 great elites worked together, especially Yuan, who was extremely proficient in attack. This was his faith. Only when the power of attack was strong enough that he could completely overwhelm his opponent would there be absolutely no need to worry about defense, because he would definitely not be hit. His was a sharp sword, which posed a serious threat to Ling Han. Chapter 2603 Ling Han's Might. Chapter 2603 Ling Han's Might. The Yin River Celestial King was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid at all. Seeing how Yuan's attack was so powerful, he took the initiative to decrease his offensive force. He was now mainly responsible for defense, not only for himself, but also for Yuan, so that Yuan could proceed without reservations. This combination of attack and defense allowed Yuan's battle prowess to be fully unleashed, further suppressing Ling Han. Sword light flashed, and blood spattered. This time Ling Han got injured. Yuan's sword was too fast and too sharp. As long as he remained unsuppressed and with his full battle prowess unleashed, he really was a nightmare for any opponent. Ling Han continuously sustained injuries, and there was blood everywhere. In order to attack unrestrained, they kept on moving while still engaged in fighting. They came to a small platform, which was relatively more spacious. There was a formation drawn on the ground. How was it drawn? Instead of using a brush, this part of the ground was concave. Therefore, when blood was spilled on the ground and naturally flowed into the grooves of the formation, the entire formation suddenly appeared to come alive. When the formation was completely filled with blood, it suddenly emitted a glorious light, and a creature appeared out of now a rare black bear-like monster covered with tentacles. This kind of monster had appeared again. Ling Han experienced a strange feeling as the aura emanating from this monster felt so familiar to him. Sure, as soon as the monster appeared, it waved its tentacles and attacked Ling Han, Yuan, and the Yin River Celestial King. Ling Han humphed, avoiding the attacks of Yuan and the Yin River Celestial King, and then threw a punch at the tentacles of the black monster bear. Peng! With just a single punch, the tentacles of the black monster immediately burst. They could not even withstand a single blow. However, The tentacles turned into countless pieces that scattered outwards in all directions. Ling Han activated the source power to shield himself from these pieces. Who knew what these things might be? He absolutely did not want them to touch him. On the other side, the Yin River Celestial King also unraveled the attack of the black bear monster. Meanwhile, Yuan didn't waste one bit of energy. With a slash of his sword, he attacked fiercely. The black bear monster made another move, and it was another attack directed at Ling Han and the others. For Yuan, the attack didn't matter anyway, since the Yin River Celestial King would subdue it, but for Ling Han, it was akin to having one more opponent. He was already in a disadvantageous position, so an additional opponent naturally increased the pressure on him. Moreover, the formation continued to operate, and another black bear monster appeared. Ling Han shouted furiously. He already fully understood the level of his strength, so there was no need to continue being beaten down on. The divine demon sword was drawn. Wang, a cold light flashed, and sword chi surged out. Pu. 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 Even this incomparably strong wall could not withstand the sword chi of the divine demon sword, and there immediately emerged countless marks several inches in depth. Ling Han started to counterattack. Pu. The sword chi swept out, and the black bear monster that had just appeared was immediately cut in half. This kind of thing had no concept of defense at all. Its destructive power was terrifying, but it had zero defenses. As long as one's battle prowess was overwhelmed, killing it was relatively simple. As soon as the sword was drawn, it could no longer be hindered. The divine demon sword slashed again. Pu. The first black bear monster was also cut in half. Ding. Ling Han's sword clashed against Yuan's sword, and Ling Han saw a small particle immediately appear on his opponent's sword. The divine demon sword was so sharp, how could anything that was not divine metal be able to withstand it? But Yuan's sword was also remarkable. It was not snapped in a single slash. Yuan's ability to adapt was astonishingly fast. When his sword was parried in one slash, he immediately retracted the sword and stabbed again. Ding, 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 ding. He stabbed with his sword several hundred times in a row, but this offensive was completed in only an instant. This required the support of extremely powerful body art. Yuan's body art might be incomparable to Ling Han's, but compared to other celestial kings, he was absolutely much stronger. Ling Han returned like for like, blocking every one of Yuan's strikes with great speed. Die! The Yin River Celestial King shouted as he, too, attacked, wanting to use this chance to kill Ling Han. He concentrated the regulations of water, which took the form of a black dragon that pierced towards Ling Han. Ling Han stared coldly at the Yin River Celestial King, his gaze full of disdain. Are you even worthy of being my opponent? He could regard Yuan as an opponent, but the Yin River Celestial King? He really wasn't worthy of it. No matter how strong his battle prowess was, he was not worthy of Ling Han's notice. He exclaimed softly, and directed his attack towards the Yin River Celestial King. The divine demon sword glowed. This was an object that surpassed any celestial weapon. Although it hadn't reached the level of heavenly venerate tool yet, its power was unparalleled. Just the sword chi alone was extremely terrifying, and it could pose a great threat even to Celestial King level defense. How would the Yin River Celestial King dare to face it head-on? He had already suffered once before. Thus, he instantly took multiple steps backwards. Yuan kept on attacking, but Ling Han was actively channeling the indestructible Heaven Scroll. For a short period of time, his defense was comparable to that of divine metal. Therefore, it didn't matter how many times Yuan cut him. Ling Han set his eyes on the Yin River Celestial King. He was going to kill this person. The Yin River Celestial King blocked the attacks. However, a Ling Han who didn't have the divine demon sword in his hand was no weaker than him. Now with Ling Han wielding a celestial tool, how was the Yin River any match? He had blocked several attacks, but was already severely injured. He gritted his teeth, and immediately turned around with the intention to run away. As for Yuan, he couldn't care less. Do you think you can run? Ling Han unleashed the regulations of space, pressing down with his left hand. Bang! The Yin River Celestial King seemed to have crashed into an invisible wall. Although he smashed through it, his speed was greatly reduced. Ling Han caught up and continued to deliver sword strikes. With the boost of the 9 transformations divine scroll, the divine demon sword became even more terrifying. The Yin River Celestial King shouted loudly. He was unwilling to die here. He was a monarch tier, and he had a great chance to become a 9th heaven Celestial King in the Celestial King graveyard. There was even a chance for him to become a heavenly venerate in the future, although this chance was extremely slim. How could such a prodigy die here? He wanted to escape. He would not come out again until he had attained the 9th heaven of the Celestial King tier. How would Ling Han let him go? All kinds of regulations were continuously used by his hands. The flow of time slowed down, the space was frozen, and gravity was like a mountain. It reached the extent that the Yin River Celestial King had no chance to escape at all. Despite Yuan's attacks being equally fierce, the activated defense of the indestructible Heaven Scroll caused Yuan to be unable to do anything against Ling Han at all. Unless the sword in his hand was replaced by a celestial weapon, he couldn't pose a threat to Ling Han's physique. The Yin River Celestial King gritted his teeth and turned back around. Now he could only go all out in the fight, otherwise he would really die here for sure. Die. He rushed towards Ling Han, believing that Ling Han's defense couldn't be so perfect that it could last indefinitely. As long as he survived this wave of Ling Han's attacks, he would be able to join forces with Yuan to suppress Ling Han again. This wasn't a bad idea, but he had overestimated the strength of his force combined with Yuan's, and underestimated the power of Ling Han and the divine demon sword. Ling Han strongly suppressed the attacks. Every time the divine demon sword slashed out, it would cause blood to spatter like a fountain. What was the divine demon sword? It was a celestial tool, and was even proceeding in the direction of becoming a heavenly venerate tool. Its destructive power was too terrifying. Being slashed by it was definitely not as simple as sustaining physical injuries. The terrifying murderous aura would actually invade all parts of the body. The Yin River Celestial King coughed up blood. The divine demon sword had already damaged his internal organs to bits and pieces, and he could not help but vomit blood. He was in great pain. He had a feeling that if he continued to fight like this, he wouldn't need to be struck down by divine demon sword at all, as all the accumulated injuries he sustained could cause him to die at any time. Why hadn't Ling Han's defenses dissipated yet? The person I want to kill won't be able to escape, Ling Han said menacingly. Chapter 2604 Interception. Chapter 2604 Interception. To the Yin River Celestial King, these words sounded like they were filled with mockery. Previously, when he had moved to save Tang Yuan in Ghost King City, Ling Han had said similar words as well. In the end, Ling Han had killed Tang Yuan right in front of his eyes. And now, Ling Han said these words yet again. The Yin River Celestial King's fury could not be restrained, yet he could not show the slightest bit of temper. His only wish was to save himself. He moved out with full power, fighting for his life. Within 10 moves, I will take your life, Ling Han declared coldly, his voice carrying not even the slightest sliver of emotion, yet being filled with absolute certainty. The eyes of the Yin River Celestial King spat flames. Previously, he had also said that he could defeat him in 10 strikes, and now Ling Han was saying that he would kill him in 10 moves, which filled him with incomparably fury. In the eyes of these two, was he really that weak? He was not weak. He was not weak. He was not weak. The Yin River Celestial King roared in rage. He struck madly, wanting to prove that he was not that weak. 1 strike, 2. 9 strikes, and he was left with the last move. Pu. A flash of sword light streaked past. Ling Han withdrew his sword, and the Yin River Celestial King stumbled. He lowered his head, looking down at his chest. A bloody hole had appeared there, and it was located at the precise position of his heart. The divine demon sword had pierced one of his vital points. The Yin River Celestial King's expression was filled with confusion. He raised his head to look at Ling Han. He wanted to open his mouth and say something, yet could not say a single word. He collapsed onto the ground, signs of life rapidly leaving his body. True enough, killed in 10 strikes. Ling Han turned his head to look back at Yuan, eyes menacing. The pressure he was emanating was extremely frightening. An ordinary fourth heaven celestial king would probably experience a breakdown when being the target of such eyes. Yet Yuan was completely unaffected. Neither did he become shaken and lose his determination because of the death of the Yin River celestial king. With a loud battle cry, he delivered a series of stabs with his sword. His power was still violent, and merely concentrated on attack, and not on defense, as if he was fighting for his life. Linghan laughed loudly. He charged out with the divine demon sword, and clashed forcefully with Yuan. Ding! 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 The sound of swords clashing continued endlessly. The two of them exchanged blows, but after only about 100 strikes, the two of them clashed one more time, and the sword in Yuan's hand shattered, turning into thousands of pieces. For a non-celestial tool to clash head-on with the divine demon sword for such a long time was something considerably extraordinary. Ling Han's sword stopped, halting at Yuan's neck. "Why do you not kill me?" Yuan asked. As long as the divine demon sword continued just a slight bit further, with the destructive power of a celestial tool, his vital signs would be instantly extinguished. Ling Han withdrew his sword. "I anticipate how you will mature and battle with me." Facing a bloodthirsty psychopath like the Yin River Celestial King, Ling Han naturally would kill him without any mercy. Yuan, however, could only be considered a battle-thirsty madman, and it would be a pity to kill him. There would come a day when this kind of person could attempt to break through to the heavenly venerable tier, and he deserved a better end. Even if he was to die, he should die on the battlefield against Hysteria, and not in this celestial king graveyard. Yuan stared at Ling Han for a while, and then said, "I will definitely surpass you." Ling Han laughed loudly. "To surpass me is not something that can be done with mere words." Yuan nodded, and withdrew his sword before striding off. He decided that he would focus wholeheartedly on polishing his sword technique in the future before he considered anything else. Ling Han walked up the steps, but realized that Yang Xiaoling and the others had long since disappeared without a trace. True. They had all discovered that he was Li Long, so how could they dare to stay behind? No matter how many lives they had, it was not enough for him to take. Of course, that was with the exception of Zhao Shuang. He was poisoned, and thought that his life was still grasped in Ling Han's hands. Naturally, he did not dare to leave. Ling Han walked over, and patted Zhao Shuang's shoulder. "You can go now." Zhao Shuang thought that he was being sarcastic, and hurriedly shook his head endlessly. "Brother Long, what are you saying now? How could I possibly betray you?" His expression was filled with loyalty. Ling Han raised a fist. "If you still aren't going to scram, I will crush your head into bits." With this threat from him, Zhao Shuang's face turned pale in terror. He quickly turned around and ran off. Internally, he was naturally in great panic. Without an antidote, wouldn't that just mean death, only a few days later? He ran for a while, and naturally did not want to just give up like this. He hurriedly returned to find Ling Han again, but what trace of Ling Han was there left? He felt apprehensive, but after 3 days, he discovered no changes had taken place in his body. He was still alive and kicking by the 4th day, and finally realized that he had fallen for Ling Han's trick. Ling Han had already said before that he had not had any eternal antidote. Zhao Shuang had initially thought that was just a joke. He had not expected that it was actually a fact. Ling Han indeed did not have an eternal antidote, because Zhao Shuang was not poisoned at all. Zhao Shuang was very furious as he had actually been deceived by Ling Han for more than 10 million years, but upon further thought, the person he had been facing was Ling Han, the most notorious bringer of calamity of Ghost King City. To be able to spend so much time with him and still be living, wasn't this great luck already? With such thoughts, he immediately felt at ease. He decided that he would return to being a well-behaved second-generation young master when he returned, and never play around again. Ling Han walked slowly, searching everywhere for caskets. There were some caskets which already had their restrictions unraveled. There were some that had not, but the weapons inside hadn't been taken at all. They were neither celestial tools nor divine metal. Moreover, they were damaged. Who would actually want them? Ling Han was pleased. He toured one burial chamber after another, and his spoils were really heavy. Several days later, He had finally completed a whole tour of this tomb, and opened all the caskets. Then, he very happily came out. He had just walked out of the large tomb. When he arrived outside, he saw that a group of people were just standing guard at the entrance. Weren't they from prosperous opening city? Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and saw that one of the second-generation young masters of Ghost King City had fallen into their hands. Ling Han did not know his name. He had not even bothered to remember. Li Long. He Yi walked out, his hand holding the collar of that second-generation young master. Ling Han stood still, and asked, "How can I help you?" "Ha ha." He Yi tossed that second-generation young master into the air, and then shot out a kick at him. Peng, that second-generation young master turned into a cannonball, careening towards Ling Han. Ling Han sidestepped, and that second-generation young master instantly crashed into the wall behind him. The sound of bones breaking rang out in succession. He turned into a mush of flesh and blood, sliding down onto the ground. The young master had not suffered. When he had kicked him, the latter had already been killed by the terrifying force. A great celestial king had died in such a lowly manner. This was the celestial king graveyard, where there was not much difference between celestial kings and stray dogs. "Or should I call you by another name?" He Yi withdrew his foot. Ling Han. Ling Han was internally shocked. How did this person know his name? "What do you mean?" he asked calmly. "No need to deny it. How many people are there in this world that can battle a seventh heaven celestial king while he is only a fourth heaven?" He Yi scoffed. "Even in the world's paramount martial academy, there is probably no other person. There is only you, a man who has such heaven-defying body art." Ling Han looked at He Yi, and then suddenly broke into a grin. "That's right. I am indeed Ling Han." With a thought, his appearance changed, and he regained his real appearance. He asked calmly, "The three of you should be from the martial academy, right? Otherwise, it was impossible that they would know so much about him." Furthermore, the feeling that the three of them gave him was extremely strong. He had even defeated the Yin River Celestial King within 10 moves. The former definitely was a prodigy of the highest tier of the martial academy. Ling Han thought for a moment, and said, "Looking at the three of you, it is clear that you were waiting here to intercept me. In other words, you have a grudge against me. In the martial academy, there are only a numbered few supreme monarch stars in 6th heaven. You, probably are Gu Hurry, right?" He had a similar pronunciation, so he should be Gu Hurry 1. Chapter 2605, Breaking Out of the Siege. Chapter 2605, Breaking Out of the Siege. He Yi, or rather Gu Hurry, couldn't help starting as his expression changed drastically. He had never imagined that Ling Han could manage to recognize his true identity despite pitifully little information. However, this was also normal. That was because after Gu Hurry, Xiaoing Xiong, and Miao Hua had entered into the Celestial King graveyard, they had also rushed all the way to prosperous opening city after hearing of how freakish Ling Han was. That was because they deduced that the person who possessed such freakish battle prowess definitely could only be Ling Han. But when they arrived at prosperous opening city, Ling Han had already set out towards the ancient tomb. Hence, the three of them joined prosperous opening city, and set off together. Their goal was Ling Han. Thus, when they previously encountered the people from Ghost King City, they would ask about Ling Han. They were sure that Ling Han would definitely not give up on such a great opportunity as the ancient tomb. He would definitely find some way to sneak in. True enough, after they came, they saw those people from Ghost King City flee in panic. Capturing one of them and interrogating him, they found out that Li Long had appeared again, and thus stood guard at this entrance. Wang Dongsen and the others expressed no disagreement. They, too, wanted nothing more than to kill Ling Han. Ling Han, prepare to die. Gu Hurry naturally would not expose his identity in full public. He merely laughed loudly, and then attacked. His strength was much superior as compared to the Yin River Celestial Kings. He was capable of defeating a 7th heaven monarch tier within 10 moves. Even though he had used his ultimate technique, this still proved that he was indeed powerful. Gu Hurry's battle prowess had definitely reached 8th heaven. His palm descended, and boom, even the skies were trembling. This was a terrifying power that was close to the pinnacle power of regulation. Ling Han moved. He could face off against the Yin River Celestial King head-on, but doing so against Jiyu Hurry still surpassed the maximum limits of his strength. Thankfully, his physique was very strong, so it would not hurt even if he was swept by a little of the aftermath. Jiyu Hurry delivered several dozen strikes, yet Ling Han managed to dodge all of them. A Celestial King actually wanted to kill another Celestial King? This was a difficult feat. There was a gap of 2 cultivation levels between the two of them, but the gap between their actual battle prowess was a single cultivation level at most. Thus, the difficulty level of Jiyu Hurry killing Ling Han was extremely high. However, Xiaoingxiong and Miao Hua moved. They both walked out, forming a triangular formation, and surrounding Ling Han. Die. These two people moved mercilessly, wanting to kill Ling Han as soon as possible so they could directly extract his spirit. Every single one of them was stronger than Ling Han in terms of battle prowess, and the three of them working together was enough for an intense battle with a peak stage 8th Heaven Celestial King. This was a crushing advantage, which brought enough difficulty for Ling Han. He was struck repeatedly, suffering multiple wounds. And this was still because Ling Han's physique had reached the 6th heaven in level. If it had been anyone else, even if their battle prowess had been equal to his opponents, they would definitely have been killed by now. With a ding, Ling Han drew the divine demon sword. Do you think you are the only one with a celestial tool? Xiaoingxiong and the others sneered. When it came to powerful people like them, who had not previously traveled the most dangerous ancient sites, obtaining a piece of divine metal was no difficult matter. Naturally, they had long since obtained their own celestial tools. To say the least, even if their luck was too bad, and they never managed to get hold of divine metal, the Martial Academy would have given them a piece as a reward after so many years. Wung! 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 Frightening power surged out, and 3 majestic pillars of light shot skywards. Jiyu Hurry and the others all drew their respective celestial tools, still having an absolute advantage. Wang Dongsen and the others were all watching this heatedly. They were all just second-generation young masters, and though the Celestial King graveyard had no shortage of celestial medicine, there was pitifully little divine metal. Aside from those that Celestial Kings had brought with them when they came here, there was basically no possibility that it could be discovered here. Hence, no matter how much they were favored, it was useless. Even when it came to 9th Heaven Celestial Kings, there were not many that had a celestial tool, what more Wang Dongsen's group. Now, seeing that Ling Han and the others all possessed a celestial tool, how could they not feel jealous? Xiaoingxiong and the others were all supreme monarch stars. In fact, their evolution index was progressing towards 12. Not only was their battle prowess astonishing, their comprehension abilities were also incredibly frightening. They, too, had fused all 3 parts of the 9 Transformations Divine Scroll, and had used it in battle, greatly improving their battle prowess. Today, you must die, Xiaoingxiong declared coldly. The 3 of them joined forces, sealing off all routes of escape for Ling Han. He definitely could not be allowed the slightest possibility of fleeing. Which of the 3 of them was not an absolutely strong prodigy? There had only been legends of how they had won victories against those with superior cultivation levels, yet not only were they using the superiority of 2 cultivation levels to battle a Celestial King 1 level lower now, it was the 3 of them working together at that. This was completely abandoning all pride. Undoubtedly, the threat this posed was too great. Ling Han was in a great crisis. The 3 of them working together were much stronger than the team-up of Ayuan and the Yin River Celestial King, causing him to bleed very quickly. Furthermore, all 3 of them possessed their own celestial tools. If he was just struck once, it was definitely not something as simple as shedding a little blood. Things couldn't continue like this, or he would die. With a battle cry, Ling Han began trying to break out of the siege. You want to escape? Miao Hua struck out with his staff, forcing Ling Han backwards. If Ling Han still managed to escape even with the 3 of them combining forces, they would have no face to show themselves in the future. Ling Han laughed loudly. His fighting spirit was already fully ignited. What others considered impossible, he was determined to accomplish. Wasn't it just the battle prowess of 3 8th heaven celestial kings? There was no way he could win, but breaking out of their siege was definitely no impossible feat. With a loud battle cry, Ling Han began to break out of the siege. As the divine demon's sword slashed, he turned into a gust of wind, charging towards Xiaoxiong. Xiaoxiong couldn't help but rage. Ling Han had chosen him as the point to break out. Did he think that he was the easiest to deal with? Damn it. Fucking damn it. Die, he shouted in fury, and threw a punch, wanting to send Ling Han back. Yet Ling Han ignored this strike, and forcefully broke out. Peng. This punch from Xiaoxiong landed on Ling Han's back, but a light flashed out, and Ling Han was completely unharmed. Instead, he increased the speed of his charge with this punch. Ling Han had taken the initiative to channel the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. His defenses now could not be considered to be at the level of divine metal, but they were definitely not something that an 8th heaven celestial king could harm. This damn defense. Xiaoxiong humphed. If Ling Han was allowed to simply break out and leave like this, the former would really be humiliated. With a soft exclamation, the spear in his hands pierced out rapidly, the might of a celestial tool fully unleashed. No matter how strong your physique is, what use is there? As long as it hasn't reached the level of divine metal, how could you be capable of blocking the sharpness of a genuine celestial tool? Otherwise, how could celestial tools possibly be so valuable? He started later than the others, and added with how he had helped Ling Han with a punch, there was no way he could have ordinarily caught up to Ling Han. He was aware of this fact as well. Thus, when the power of the spear was fully expended, he pushed forwards fiercely. Peng, the spear flew out of his hands, yet with a burst of 10 times the speed, it pursued after Ling Han. This strike was really too fast. If Ling Han continued on a straight course, he would definitely be struck by the spear, and if he veered off, that would definitely affect his speed, and thus allow Jiyu Hurry and Miao Hua to catch up to him, and intercept him once more. However, Ling Han's reaction was something no one had expected. He merely twisted his body slightly. The spear reached him. Even with his physique, it still could not be blocked. The tip of the spear instantly sank in, but it did not penetrate too deeply, and Ling Han did not even pause in his footsteps. Return. Xiaoxiong grasped at empty air, and the spear immediately turned around and returned, bringing with it a fountain of blood, which also caused Ling Han to stumble. However, Ling Han merely released a ferocious roar, and his speed only increased even faster, with him concentrating his full effort on escaping. In this way, Jiyu Hurry and Miao Hua could not catch up to Ling Han. After he had run far enough, Ling Han turned his head, his eyes sweeping over the faces of Xiaoxiong and the others. His gaze was extremely cold, as if he was looking at 3 dead bodies. Chapter 2606, Another Great Battle. Chapter 2606, Another Great Battle. Ling Han did not say anything, but anyone who saw his expression could guess what he wanted to convey. And that was that he was definitely going to kill Xiaoxiong and the others. This seemed a bit amusing. Xiaoxiong and the others were all 6th heaven celestial kings whose battle prowess soared directly into 8th heaven celestial king tier, and with their combined might, they could even match the battle prowess of a peak stage 8th heaven celestial king tier. To kill them, one had to possess the 9th heaven's battle prowess at least, right? Yet Ling Han was only a 4th heaven celestial king, so what basis did he have for such confidence? But a chill rose up in the hearts of Xiaoxiong and the others, and even their souls were trembling. Why had they entered the celestial king graveyard to snipe Ling Han? Firstly, they coveted the secret of Ling Han's powerful body art, and wanted to take it for themselves, and secondly, they were wary of Ling Han's potential. If they did not stop him, there would eventually come a day when he would surpass them. The 3 of them immediately strengthened their resolve. The more things were like this, the more they were determined to kill Ling Han. Humph, even if you have escaped our encirclement, so what? Where will you be able to escape with such severe injuries? Miao Hua asked menacingly. Even if we must chase you to the ends of the world, we will still kill you. Xiaoxiong expressed his stand on the matter as well. Die. Jiyu Hurry's remark was very simple, But a single die also expressed his thoughts completely. Xiao, xiao, xiao. The three of them set off in pursuit at the same time. Ling Han turned around, regulations of space spreading out. Wide-range spatial transportation could not be done here, but movement within a smaller range was still possible. At the same time, he was also causing trouble for these three great elites, slowing them down. There's no way you can escape. Xiao Yingxiong and the others locked their respective divine sense on Ling Han. Ling Han burst out in speed. Though he was inferior by 2 cultivation levels, his command over the regulations of space allowed him to possess even higher speed, and adding how there were many ancient graves here, with fog obstructing visibility, he soon threw the 3 pursuers off his trail. He entered into a large tomb, found a corner, and then entered into the celestial guest residence, where he immediately began healing his injuries. This time, his injuries were extremely severe, especially after that last strike when he was injured by the celestial tool. Though it missed his vital points, terrifying destructive power was still gushing in his body, and this caused 1/3 of his body to directly deteriorate. Not only that, this kind of deterioration was still spreading towards the rest of his body. If it were not for the fact that he had used source power to wrap around his heart, he would probably have died long ago. Ling Han ingested an alchemical pill. He did not tell the women about his present state, or the Empress might directly charge out to commit murder. That would be too terrible. Xiao Yingxiong and the others would definitely not harm the Empress, but the consequences would only be worse. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, wanting to remove the deteriorating power left behind by the celestial tool. The reason why celestial tools were celestial tools was their terrifying destructive power. Anything that was forged from divine metal would have this kind of ability, and the only difference was that after the celestial tool was forged, it could be activated. It could then battle by itself, unlike an ordinary weapon that was forged from divine metal, which definitely needed a user to wield it. Judging from the end result, with Ling Han sustaining this strike, whether it was a celestial tool or a divine metal weapon, the damage caused was more or less equal. The indestructible heaven scroll channeled endlessly inside his body, slowly expelling the destructive power of the celestial tool. The pace was really, really slow. Theoretically speaking, divine metal itself was already at the height of the 9th heaven celestial king tier. If one was struck directly, it would be equivalent to having been struck by a 9th heaven celestial king. However, the injury would not immediately explode, but rather cause damage slowly. Especially when the injury was in the proximity of vital areas. One could not completely remove the whole area, so this was extremely troublesome. Thankfully, the indestructible heaven scroll was the precious technique of a heavenly venerate that was superior to regulations. Even if Ling Han could not fully unleash the might of the indestructible heaven scroll due to the limits of his own cultivation level, he was still the source of its power, and the destructive power of a celestial tool was limited. As long as there was enough time, he would definitely be able to eliminate this destructive power. Ling Han exerted time acceleration effects on himself so he could shrink down the time needed for recovery. He spent more than 500 years, and in reality, around half a year's time had passed. Ling Han finally healed the injury caused by the celestial tool completely. Ling Han stepped out of the celestial guest residence. He wanted to accumulate the final bit of power through cultivation in preparation for breaking through to the 5th heaven, and he toured the large tomb at the same time, letting the divine demon sword devour enough divine metal so it could advance further. Whether it was Ling Han advancing into 5th heaven, or the divine demon sword advancing to the level of a heavenly venerate tool, it would allow his battle prowess to undergo a complete transformation. When he battled Xiao Yingxiong and the others again, he would not have to flee in such a sorry state. I will definitely seek a reckoning for this debt. Ling Han continued to open coffins within this large tomb. Every time he opened a coffin, he would apologize to the dead. After extracting the divine metal, he would carefully close the coffin back again. Having disturbed their eternal slumber, he felt guilt towards them. All of a sudden, Ling Han sensed an extremely dangerous aura, and immediately drew the divine demon sword, which he then raised before him. Xiao, a flash of sword light streaked past, slicing towards him, the sword chi shattering the heavens. Ding! Ling Han struck out with his sword, parrying this strike, but his figure was still forced backwards. Peng, he only stopped after crashing into the wall behind him. I have already said it before, there is no way you can escape. The person who had struck revealed himself. It was Ji Hurry. He walked out, sword in hand and aura blazing. With his present battle prowess that was close to the peak stage of the 8th heaven, he was practically invincible here. How has he found me? This thought flashed through Ling Han's head, but he still chose to break out without a moment's hesitation. The walls here were too thick, which made the place a natural prison. In that case, as long as both Xiao Yingxiong and Miao Hua both came here as well, Ling Han would really have no means of escape with one of them guarding a single passageway each. Hence, he had to break out before they managed to encircle him again. Channeling the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, every strike he delivered was aimed at causing injury to both his opponent and himself. This caused Ji Hurry to fall into a dilemma. His strength was indeed greater than Ling Han's, but he did not dare to let himself be struck even once by the celestial tool. Furthermore, Ling Han's battle prowess had also reached the level of the 7th heaven, so how could Ji Hurry underestimate him? Ji Hurry did not want to suffer heavy injuries himself when he killed Ling Han. Who could guarantee that Xiao Yingxiong and Miao Hua would not turn on him when they made their way here? This was the Celestial King graveyard. The dark side in everyone's heart would be exposed and boundlessly magnified. There were no rules or laws here, and it was very easy to go mad or psychotic here. And if one died here, who would pursue the matter, and how could they pursue the matter? Hence, Ji Hurry was going to capture Ling Han, but he could not allow himself to be injured. At the very least, he could not sustain heavy injuries, as that would affect his battle prowess. With such reservations, it was difficult for him to intercept Ling Han. Furthermore, though this was not a labyrinth, there were truly a considerable number of crossroads. Ling Han very easily grabbed hold of this, and he took this chance to charge out. Ji Hurry hurriedly set off in pursuit, fire burning in his heart. Ling Han actually managed to escape again. But what could Ji Hurry do? Ling Han had grasped the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. It allowed his physique to become incredibly tough for a short period of time, allowing him to trade injury for injury. With how Ji Hurry also had his own reservations, how was he supposed to intercept Ling Han? He wanted to reap harvests, but he was not willing to sacrifice anything. How could there possibly be anything as good as that? Ling Han moved quickly. There were really too many turns in the stairway here, which greatly impacted his speed. He did not know how long he had circled around for. He had just made another turn, when a staff suddenly swept out towards him, bringing with it an incredibly terrifying force. Miao Hua's figure appeared as well. There was a cold smirk on his face. From the look of things, he had already discovered Ling Han, yet had not appeared immediately. Instead, he had been lying in ambush here. That was indeed quite sly. Chapter 2607 Unstoppable. Chapter 2607 Unstoppable. Had Ling Han been under normal circumstances, Miao Hua would never have been able to ambush him, as the latter would have discovered the former's presence in advance. However, the current circumstances were unusual because Ling Han was running with great haste and more focused on Ji Hurry, who was tailing him, resulting in his divine sense falling short of optimum condition as would have been under normal circumstances. Furthermore, Miao Hua had completely suppressed his aura for the sake of this ambush. Naturally, it was impossible to effectively guard against it. Ling Han only reacted when the staff swept towards him. At this time, it was already too late to turn his body around or even parry. Ling Han humphed as he channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, and golden seals immediately appeared on his body. Peng! Violently struck by the staff, Ling Han was predictably sent flying and slammed heavily against the wall. Under the impact of the terrifying force, the surface of the wall concaved, and the entire large tomb was shaking violently. This strike from Miao Hua's staff was so terrifying that even such a hard wall was ruptured. On the other hand, this also proved the sturdiness of the wall. The blast by someone with 8th heaven battle prowess merely left a crater on the wall. This was truly unimaginable. Ling Han groaned and continuously vomited blood. However, he didn't hesitate, and dashed forward. Still thinking of escaping? Miao Hua sneered. The power of his strike was already expended. Still, he loosened his left hand's grip on the staff, and delivered a palm strike towards Ling Han. Wung, 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 his palm kept getting larger and larger with each strike. Flames rose, instantly turning this place into a volcanic cave. Ling Han's clothing immediately caught fire. It was made of celestial king-tier fur, but so what? It burned at a speed visible to the naked eye, revealing the skin underneath. However, that was it. Ling Han's hair was still jet black, with a crystalline sheen, and was not at all burned by the high temperature. This was only natural, since his physique strength was at the level of sixth heaven. Had Miao Hua landed a palm strike directly on him, then even Ling Han's physique would not have been able to bear it. However, this was merely a sliver of the flames Miao Hua surged out, so it was naturally impossible to hurt Ling Han. Boom! A palm strike was delivered with great momentum. Ling Han let out a battle cry, and countered with a sword slash. Shua, the sword light radiated gloriously. Pu. That big palm was immediately cut into halves. Nothing could stand against the sharp edge of a celestial tool. Miao Hua humphed coldly and withdrew his left hand, only to see a shallow wound dripping with blood on his palm. Fortunately, it was only injured by the sword chi, not directly slashed by the celestial tool. He channeled his cultivation technique, and the bleeding immediately ceased, and the wound was healed. Detestable guy. Miao Hua gritted his teeth. Having been struck by his staff, Ling Han definitely should have sustained several broken bones and severe injuries to internal organs. Miao Hua didn't expect Ling Han still had such powerful battle prowess to fight back furiously. This kind of guy whose will to fight became stronger when the situation became more dangerous was absolutely annoying. Just like when facing a trapped tiger, Miao Hua could not be negligent, or it would be disastrous for him. Xiao, Jiyu Hurry arrived at this moment, and the two looked at each other with surprised expressions. Despite two great elites hunting him down, Ling Han still managed to escape. This young man was indeed outrageously freakish. After him. The two set out together, and chased after Ling Han. If Ling Han managed to get out from this large tomb, the area outside would be wide, and the fog would additionally make it difficult to see, which would then allow him to escape easily. Therefore, Ling Han had to be taken down here. Ling Han, you are a prodigy of the martial academy with your name existing on the Eternal Stone. Don't you even have the guts to have one battle? Miao Hua said, naturally doing so to cause disturbance to Ling Han's mindset. Jiyu Hurry also said, we promise to give you a fair chance to fight. Just pick one of us, and as long as you can endure 1,000 moves, we will never seek you again. Ling Han ran with great haste, a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Naturally, he could not believe even a single word from both of them. Fair. Had they been fair, then how could they have teamed up to snipe him, and even used a sneak attack? From this moment on, both of you should cherish every day, because there isn't much time left for you guys. Ling Han said coldly. Jiyu Hurry and Miao Hua were furious. This brat was indeed too arrogant. Did he think that he was the only one making progress, while the two of them ceased to progress? Admittedly, Ling Han had more potential than them, but even if he was to surpass them, it was not a feat that could be achieved within a short period. They were also a little puzzled. Since Miao Hua had already joined Jiyu Hurry, why hadn't Xiao Yingxiong appeared yet? If Ling Han were allowed to run at this rate, he might escape. But it was as if Xiao Yingxiong had completely vanished. He never appeared, allowing Ling Han to get out of the large tomb. Taking advantage of the fog, Ling Han escaped from the other two. This made Miao Hua and Jiyu Hurry furious. They couldn't help but scream out to the sky with such booming sound that its intensity even caused the surrounding fog to temporarily disperse. At this moment, Xiao Yingxiong appeared. Why have you come so late? Miao Hua and Jiyu Hurry demanded at the same time with extreme dissatisfaction. Xiao Yingxiong's eyes were somewhat glazed. His eyeballs were covered with a layer of black stuff. After a pause, his eyes immediately returned to clarity, and he said, I found out something, so I was delayed. What can be more important than taking down Ling Han? Miao Hua humphed. Xiao Yingxiong countered, if we can crack the secret of that thing, it absolutely will not be any less valuable than Ling Han. Oh, Miao Hua's and Jiyu Hari's eyes lit up at the same time. Then let's go take a look. Ling Han ran for a while before swiftly entering the celestial guest residence again for healing. Previously, he was almost stabbed in the heart by a celestial spear, while this time he was struck by a celestial staff. He had several broken bones, and his body was currently being destroyed by an acute murderous qi. The level of indestructible heaven's scroll is still not sufficient. If I can advance it to the indestructible celestial king physique, then it will not be so difficult to fight against a celestial tool, or if I can cultivate the indestructible divine metal physique, then with a body akin to divine metal, there is no need to fear any celestial tool at all. Ling Han sighed deeply. However, after advancing the indestructible heaven's scroll to such a level, one would need a massive quantity of resources to progress a step further. Thinking about it, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had also cultivated the indestructible heaven's scroll only after reaching the Heavenly Venerable tier due to his limited strength. Where could Ling Han get such a quantity of resources? It was already a miracle that his indestructible celestial king physique was in fact superior to his own cultivation level now. Another half a year had passed in real time, and Ling Han had completely healed the injury caused by the celestial tool. How did those three find me? Ling Han pondered this question. He hid himself in celestial guest residence for half a year without incident, but he was sniped as soon as he appeared. It seemed that the trio had a special way to locate him. Perhaps they planted something on me during the first battle, and even heaven-deceiving technique couldn't cover my tracks. However, celestial guest residence was made of divine metal, which surpassed their means. After all, their battle prowess is merely at the level of the 8th heaven. Ling Han made such a hypothesis, but he nevertheless ran out without hesitation. He had escaped from the overwhelming danger posed by the three elites, where his life had been on a thread and being bombarded by celestial tools. Despite it being extremely dangerous, it also made him gain comprehension continuously. He believed that he could completely strengthen his foundations this time, thereby getting ready to attempt the breakthrough to the 5th heaven. He wanted to confirm his guess, and sat on the top of a large tomb to see if Miao Hua and the others would rush over swiftly. Sure enough, within half a day's time, 3 people came out of the fog. Who else could they be if not Miao Hua and company? Chapter 2608 Strange Turn of Events. Chapter 2608 Strange Turn of Events. Ling Han was just about to speak, yet was slightly taken aback. At present, Xiao Yingxiong and the others appeared to be a bit strange. Their eyeballs were covered with a layer of black stuff, and there was an indescribably strange qi emanating from their entire bodies. Ling Han couldn't help but feel chills. It was a bit like the black bear-like monster from before. Yes, although the form was completely different, there was something identical in terms of the aura. Ling Han, have you come round? Are you planning to surrender your life? Xiao Yingxiong sneered. He stood upright, exuding strong confidence, as if he had the guts to battle even a 9th heaven celestial king if one was to stand in front of him. Your life will end by our hand. Miao Hua also said. Jiyu Hari didn't spout any nonsense. He had always been cultured and refined, but now there was an indescribable ferocity to him that made one shudder. The trio spread out into a triangular formation to surround Ling Han. Naturally, Ling Han wouldn't let them succeed. He had confirmed his hypothesis that the trio had a special means to track him. With a battle cry, the divine demon sword appeared, and he directly broke through their encirclement. You can't run away. Xiao Yingxiong laughed loudly. He struck with the spear he gripped in his right hand, while his left hand pressed at the empty air in Ling Han's direction, and a terrifying pressure immediately enshrouded Ling Han. Ling Han felt a kind of pain in his head, as if he was being poked by countless needles, which made him want to faint so that he would no longer suffer such pain. He couldn't help but feel startled. After all, his spirit had been refined through the indestructible heaven's scroll, so how could he be this weak? Ling Han, I've really overestimated you before. Xiao Yingxiong instantly struck with murderous intent, stabbing his spear towards Ling Han. In front of me, you won't even survive a single blow. Ling Han blocked with his sword, and the spear was parried with a ding. However, a terrifying force reverberated, pushing him backwards. "You're only in the fourth heaven," Xiao Yingxiong said disdainfully, and swept out with his right hand again. A black seal appeared in the palm of his hand, shaped like a hexagon, and it was pressed towards Ling Han. Inconceivable. In reality, only half a year had passed. How could Xiao Yingxiong's battle prowess have increased so much? This thought crossed Ling Han's mind. Xiao Yingxiong's cultivation level had not changed, and even his power had not changed as well, but he had mastered a method that could cause huge spiritual damage. It was as Ling Han possessed the advantage of body art over others, which directly allowed him to defy the heavens. Although Xiao Yingxiong wasn't as freakish, he had also raised his battle prowess to a higher level. Now just he alone boasted the battle prowess of the peak stage of the 8th Heaven Celestial King tier, completely overwhelming Ling Han. Peng! Ling Han channeled the indestructible Heaven Scroll, took a blow from Xiao Yingxiong head-on, and then used that impact to speed up to escape the encirclement. Humph! Miao Hua struck with his spear while delivering a palm strike with his right hand. The terrifying pressure assaulted Ling Han, causing him to have a splitting headache. The trio seemed to have mastered some kind of secret technique which granted them the ability to cause lethal damage against the spirit. Ling Han gave out a loud roar, and used teleportation. Peng, 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 his body forcibly broke through the space, and instantly arrived a far distance away. The trio including Xiao Yingying did not pursue, but sneered instead. By practicing this secret technique, our battle prowess can still be increased. When we next meet this boy, we can easily take his life. His body art is very strong, so he can still help us improve to some extent, although this isn't very important now compared to the means we currently possess. The trio were full of confidence, knowing that they could not catch up to Ling Han, so they simply gave up the chase. Ling Han ran for a long time before entering the celestial guest residence again. This time, it only took him half a day to recover. After all, he had not been directly struck by a celestial tool. What did those three guys encounter? Their spiritual attack is so terrifying. Though we have merely exchanged one or two blows, I have a feeling that their personalities seem to have changed as well. They have become incredibly bloodthirsty and sinister. What secrets are hidden in this large tomb? Ling Han was extremely apprehensive of Desolate Moon having such resolve to spread the amazing technique of a heavenly venerate. If the latter wasn't the number one nicest person in the world, then he had to have an incredibly huge plot. Would there be any good people in the Celestial King graveyard? Maybe there were, but they were definitely limited, otherwise they would be devoured whole by others. Therefore, Desolate Moon had to be the latter case. He was plotting something extremely big. Ling Han really couldn't think of what the other party was plotting that he could be so generous. Ling Han left the celestial guest residence, and started wandering around, but didn't enter any large tomb so that it would be easy for him to escape in the event of any unusual circumstances. After moving about for a while, the trio including Miao Hua did not rush over to kill him. Instead, he encountered two groups of people engaging in battle. He didn't know why the two groups of people clashed, but the battle was extremely fierce, and they all used techniques similar to that of Xiao Yingxiong and company. The changes they had undergone were more obvious than those of Xiao Yingxiong and company, with black qi emanating from their entire bodies, as if they were demonic killers. Yi. Ling Han was suddenly startled. Wasn't this somewhat similar to the black bear-like monster? If they had tentacles growing out of their bodies, then there really wouldn't be any difference. Had they been subtly changed by this place? No one had noticed anything strange, because they were still seeking treasures and engaging in battles. Why am I not affected as well? Ling Han checked himself. There wasn't any black substance covering his eyeballs, and of course he didn't possess any power to cause spiritual damage. He thought about it carefully. Was it because he spent a large portion of time in the celestial guest residence? Or that he cultivated the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, a body art created by a heavenly venerate, which could greatly increase the strength of one's spirit? He felt an alarm go off in his heart. Such a method that could alter the personalities of the trio including Xiao Yingxiong was truly terrifying. Yi, could this be Desolate Moon's plot? Was he intending to turn everyone here into bloodthirsty lunatics? Although everyone in the Celestial King graveyard was bloodthirsty, As if they were psychotic, everyone still cherished their own lives after all, with each having their own plans. The formation of the different forces was clear evidence of this, otherwise everyone would just form one single group together. Still, what benefit would this bring to Desolate Moon? Why would a celestial king do something so meaningless, letting everyone here exterminate one another until everyone was wiped out? What good could Desolate Moon gain from this? Brahmin celestial flower? Ascending dragon pill? While Ling Han was analyzing it, the battle between the two groups of people had ended, resulting in the complete annihilation of one side. No one escaped. It was as if everyone had gone mad. The winning side was only left with 3 people standing. They turned their gazes towards Ling Han, with black light flashing in their eyes, and exuding a terrifying chill. Without hesitation, they rushed forward to attack Ling Han. Ling Han humphed and rushed out, throwing 3 punches in a row with loud peng noises. The 3 of them were crushed by him. He flew upwards, swiftly retreating 100 meters, but the black chi continued to float towards him like a shadow. What the heck is this? Ling Han no longer tried to evade it, he was too curious, and wanted to test it on himself. Chapter 2609, Central Area. Chapter 2609, Central Area. Ling Han stretched out a finger. As if drawn to it, those 3 streaks of black chi instantly darted in through the tip of his finger. At that moment, countless seals flashed in front of Ling Han's eyes. Great Tao appeared in front of him, yet it seemed unlike any other regulations that he cultivated, granting him appreciation. But at the same time, he felt mentally unbalanced. Out of nowhere, he had grasped some kind of means that could attack the spirits of his opponents, and cause terrifying damage. So this was how Xiao Yingxiong and his company had gained that technique to cause spiritual damage. Ling Han had a feeling, or even yearning, and that was to kill even more people. The means he had grasped would become stronger and stronger. In fact, he would be able to kill even a 9th heaven celestial king, turning the latter into a soulless body. He was suddenly shocked. If he fell under the control of this kind of impulse, would he still be himself? However, the longing for strength was so powerful that even he felt like he could just barely suppress this urge. Ling Han took a deep breath. No wonder Xiao Yingxiong and the others had been affected, even with how freakish they were. That was because this corresponded to the yearning of a cultivator at the deepest level, and that was to become stronger. For people of the Celestial King Graveyard, what else could be more normal than bloodshed and slaughter? There was no need for them to be affected. They had always been killing and causing bloodshed, so what if they killed some more? Ling Han entered into the Celestial Guest Residence. He was going to expel the influence of these murderous emotions. The moment he entered into the Celestial Guest Residence, Ling Han involuntarily felt himself relax. It seems like the whole environment is affecting me, but this black-colored chi has a more obvious effect. Celestial tools can effectively block off this effect, so I have relaxed considerably after entering here. This should be the reason I was not affected even after so long. Ling Han sat down cross-legged. Indestructible Heaven's scroll surged out, allowing him to maintain a clean mind. I am who I am, and I will not be affected by external factors. Over a dozen days later, Ling Han stood up. He condensed water vapor, which turned into a mirror. He studied his eyes carefully in the mirror. They were bright and calm, without the slightest bit of malevolence. I should have successfully dispelled it, but the whole environment will still exert some influence. I cannot stay outside for too long, or I will definitely lose myself slowly. This is a subtle influence making use of one's mentality and yearning to become stronger, a gradual invasion. However, after I dispel the black chi, I will not be able to use this kind of spiritual attack technique. It seems like this black chi is the source of its power. Desolate Moon. What exactly is he planning? Ling Han stepped out of the Celestial Guest Residence and decided to stay for the moment. Firstly, he wanted to see how this matter would end, and secondly, he still wanted the divine metal in this place. Added together, the divine metal here was not a small amount. He knew that the Celestial Guest Residence could interfere with the tracking of Xiao Yingxiong and company, so he would move around for a while, and then enter into the Celestial Guest Residence, which was a good chance for him to dispel the influence that the surroundings here had on him as well. It was like Ling Han was an outsider looking in. He saw countless battles turning this place into a genuine graveyard as a great number of celestial kings were buried here. In the blink of an eye, over a dozen years had passed. Ling Han had gone to more or less all the large tombs in the outer circle, and taken all the divine metal they contained. The might of the divine demon sword had greatly improved. At this time, he turned his eyes towards the center of this area. Desolate Moon had brought practically all the ninth heaven celestial kings in there. Had they now obtained the so-called treasure here? Or had Desolate Moon planted an astonishing conspiracy, embroiling everyone here? I'll break through to the fifth heaven first, then go in and look around. Only after I reach the height of the fifth heaven will I be able to deal with being hunted by ninth heaven celestial kings. Ling Han prepared to break through to the fifth heaven, but he discovered that he had suppressed his cultivation level for too long, so he actually could not find the point to break through anymore. After several months, the celestial tree inside his body showed no signs of blooming flowers or bearing fruits. The more pressure he was under, the greater his motivation and the stronger his fighting spirit. But now he was having too easy a time, so his fighting spirit was also sluggish. He was actually unable to break through. I need a battle. He wanted to draw out Xiao Yingxiong and the others. If he had another battle, he would be able to use it to stimulate his fighting spirit and break through to the fifth heaven. When he did not want to encounter Xiao Yingxiong and company, these three would appear like ghosts, but when he truly took the initiative to draw them out, it was like they had vanished into thin air. There was no sign of them at all. Could it be that they have already entered into that final area? Ling Han looked towards the fog. The visibility here was still extraordinarily poor. At most, he could only see within the range of a kilometer. I'll go in then. Ling Han changed his mind. At first, he had wanted to break through to the fifth heaven before entering the last area, but now it was necessary for him to enter in advance. Otherwise, there would not be any trigger for him to break through to the fifth heaven at all. He strode forwards. The fog in front of him dispersed. This was very strange as it only hid things 1 kilometer away from him. After walking for several days, an open space suddenly appeared ahead of him, revealing a great mountain. No, it was not a mountain, but rather a large tomb. A tombstone stood, tall and stretching into the clouds. There were words on it, Ancient Tomb. This was the ancient tomb then. Now that Ling Han had arrived here, the fog finally dispersed completely, and he could see the entire shape of the large tomb. Streaks of light swept out, emanating a pressure that surpassed regulations. This was the tomb of a heavenly venerate. This tomb was not built with any entry passageway, yet a hole had forcefully been blasted here. He was certain that it was the doing of Desolate Moon and the other ninth heaven celestial kings. So what if there was heavenly venerable tier pressure here? With the combined efforts of thousands of ninth heaven celestial kings, even a living first-tier heavenly venerate could be defeated, what more when this was just a dead heavenly venerate? However, though the tiger was dead, his intimidation still lived. With the vague pressure imposed by the heavenly venerable tier aura here, all celestial kings below the fifth heaven were still unworthy of entering the large tomb. They could only hover around outside. Battle after battle was breaking out, and there were people dying endlessly, yet this allowed the others to become even stronger. Ling Han cast an eye over them. Wherever he looked, he discovered that there was a layer of dark light over everyone's eyes, which exuded a chilling air. A delectable little guy. As Ling Han was observing them, he had also been discovered. A woman walked towards him, her hips swaying seductively. She was incredibly beautiful. Though a dark light was also shining in her eyes, it added a devilish air of temptation for her. Bringing with her a fragrant breeze, she still did not stop when she was 9 meters away from Ling Han. There was an intoxicating smile on her face. Shua, a cold light flashed past, and she suddenly moved. She was clearly delicate and dainty, but her weapon was actually a 9-meter-long saber, which she brandished in a slash towards Ling Han's head. Who, the great saber whistled through the air, seal after seal lighting up on it. Ling Han instantly felt a great pain in his head, as if he was being pierced by needles. How detestable. Ling Han frowned. This woman was only a fourth heaven celestial king, and based on the battle prowess she displayed, she only had the aptitude of an emperor tier, yet she could actually cause him a stinging sensation. That kind of mysterious means was truly shocking. Without mercy, he sent out a punch. Peng! That woman was immediately killed. A sliver of black chi rose up, floating towards Ling Han. Mine! Mine! All of you, scram! Immediately, more than a dozen people pounced out, wanting to snatch this sliver of black chi for themselves. It was as if they had gone mad. Ling Han humphed coldly, and threw out a series of punches. Peng! 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 These people were all destroyed by his hands. With every person that died, a sliver of black chi would rise up. More than a dozen streaks of black chi wafted, flying towards Ling Han. Get lost! Ling Han shouted loudly. He did not need this kind of thing. This was not power that he had cultivated himself. No matter how powerful it was, he would throw it away like worn shoes. Chapter 2610, 3 Great Elites. Chapter 2610, 3 Great Elites. The black chi would naturally not obey Ling Han. It still continued floating towards him. Ling Han shook his right hand, and threw a punch towards the black chi. Boom, the fist swept out, and these streaks of black chi all fluttered out endlessly, separating and dispersing. However, they immediately reunited. Furthermore, they were no longer separate streaks of black chi, but rather fused as one. Strangely, it was a fusion of over a dozen streaks of black chi, but it did not become thicker. It seemed to have sustained heavy injury from Ling Han's punch. But Ling Han knew very well that it was not that the black chi had been injured from his attack, but rather that it had become even more concentrated. The black chi surged out, darting towards Ling Han like a spiritual serpent. Ling Han drew his sword. Shua! The divine demon sword slashed quickly at the black chi. The black chi made a clear dodging motion, but this sword strike from Ling Han was too fast. How could it manage to dodge? Peng! His sword pierced through it, and the black chi instantly dispersed once more. However, after turning into a mist-like substance, it fused back again very rapidly, turning once more into a black-colored spirit serpent, and continuing on its course to wrap around Ling Han. Yet Ling Han revealed a hint of a smile. This time, it looked like it had again been wasted effort. However, he acutely sensed that the density of the black chi had lowered slightly. Though it really was just a slight bit. Ling Han delivered a series of strikes with his sword. Shua, shua, shua. This time, he did not wait for the black chi to gather again. The divine demon's sword shot out repeatedly, endlessly slicing the black chi into bits, and in this process, the black chi was also gradually fading. After over a dozen breaths later, the black chi had finally faded completely and disappeared. After all, the divine demon sword was a celestial tool. Its destructive power far surpassed Ling Han's. However, if the people here saw how Ling Han was being so wasteful, they would definitely go mad with fury. This was the source of their strength he destroyed. This kind of wastefulness definitely could not be forgiven. Ling Han withdrew his sword. This black chi was truly stubborn. Even with the divine demon sword, he had to attack for such a long time. If it was his bare fists, perhaps he really would not be able to deal with it. Ling Han killed over a dozen people in a row, and finally established his authority. Though there were still a considerable number of people watching him in the surroundings, and they showed keen and eager expressions, they ultimately did not make a move on him. It was indeed true that the black chi would affect the personality, turning one bloodthirsty, but it could not completely alter one's intelligence. If there was the slightest bit of opportunity, these people would take the risk and make an attempt, but when the power gap was so large that there was absolutely zero chance, they naturally would not choose to die for nothing. However, it was not that there were no truly strong beings here. A man strode over. He was like a massive gorilla, his body about as tall as 3 meters, and his back was slightly hunched, with his extraordinarily large head jutting forwards. His tongue was lolling out of his mouth, measuring about a foot in length. It was red as blood, and he looked like a ghost that had died from strangulation. On another side, an old woman bearing a sword on her back also appeared quietly, dressed in cyan. And behind Ling Han, a young man in red walked out stealthily like a panther spirit. Not the slightest bit of fluctuation appeared in his aura, and he could not be detected by divine sense at all. He could only be seen by the naked eye. Ling Han's eyes turned cold. "Do you guys wish to die?" "You are merely a fourth heaven celestial king," the gorilla said disdainfully. He strode out, his every step causing the ground to tremble, which emphasized his intimidating presence. With a ding, the old woman had drawn her sword. She rasped, "Your battle prowess is not too bad, though. Stealing your cultivation will have some benefits for me." Only the young man in red did not speak. He had extreme confidence in his stealth, and he was sure that there was no way Ling Han could sense him. Ling Han stood, his hands crossed behind his back. He had said all he wanted to say. The only thing left now was battle. "Die." The large gorilla pounced first. His arms spread out, seal after seal lighting up on the surface of his body, and causing his skin to become metallic while reflecting light in a blinding manner. He leaped up high, his arms turning into twin hammers that pounded heavily towards Ling Han. "Shua!" The old woman slashed out with her sword at the same time, its chilling light blazing. However, the most fatal attack still came from that young man in red behind Ling Han. He had already snuck to a spot less than 3 meters behind Ling Han. With a shake of his hands, a triclawed blade appeared in each of his hands, which he stabbed towards Ling Han soundlessly. The young in red revealed a cruel smile. Though his triclawed blades were not celestial tools, they had been forged from a precious metal that was inferior only to divine metal, so they were extremely sharp. Adding his own power, even an 8th heaven celestial king could possibly lose their life in a moment of distraction. He was an absolute assassin. Just as the triclawed blades looked like they were merely an inch away from Ling Han, he finally shouted loudly, "Die! The one who should die here is you." Ling Han suddenly turned his head, his divine demon sword stabbing out. Pu. It directly pierced the forehead of the young man in red. This was a presence that surpassed celestial tool. Even a 9th heaven celestial king might not be able to block it when he was fully focusing on defense, what more when the opponent was just a 5th heaven celestial king. The eyes of the young man in red widened, his expression filled with disbelief. That smile from before was still lingering at the corners of his lips, making him look extremely bizarre. He could not believe it. How had Ling Han been able to discover him, a king of assassins? It should be known that the reason that he had been tossed into the Celestial King graveyard was because he had assassinated too many Celestial Kings, and there were some that had powerful backgrounds at that. This time, he had launched a sneak attack on a 4th heaven Celestial King when he himself was a 5th heaven Celestial King. No matter how he thought about it, there was no way he could fail, yet it was him being killed with a single strike from Ling Han's sword. How could he possibly believe this? How could he accept it? Ling Han smiled slightly. "When you show off your stealth abilities in front of me, you are biting off more than you can chew." The heaven-deceiving technique that Ling Han cultivated had been modified by Wally. Even a first-tier heavenly venerate could not detect anything off, and correspondingly, Ling Han's ability of detecting stealth techniques had greatly improved. If this young man in red had attacked head-on, perhaps he would have been able to last a few moves from Ling Han, yet he just had to be too confident in his assassination techniques. He had not imagined that Ling Han could possibly counter at all, and that his counter would be so terrifyingly powerful. In truth, he had really not died for no reason. On the other side, the large gorillas and the old woman's attack also reached Ling Han. Ling Han did not even turn around at all. Pang! Pang! The two attacks reached him in succession, but a golden light appeared on his body, and blocked the attacks altogether. This naturally was the might of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll. "What?" the large gorilla and old woman exclaimed in shock at the same time, their expressions filled with astonishment. They were affected by the black chi, but that only caused them to become more bloodthirsty. Their intelligence was not affected. This was too terrifying. 3 great 5th heaven celestial kings had joined forces and attacked Ling Han together, but not only was not a single hair on Ling Han's head harmed, this 4th heaven celestial king had killed one of them with a single strike instead. Ling Han turned around, showing a hint of menace. "I have already told you all before, don't court death. With a tap of his foot and sword in hand, Ling Han attacked. The large gorilla and old woman both retreated repeatedly, but Ling Han's offensive was too powerful. They were not able to match him at all, and could only retreat. Die. They unleashed a spiritual attack. This move was very strong. Ling Han's movements instantly slowed slightly. Haha. The large gorilla immediately waved an arm and struck out at Ling Han. This was an extremely good opportunity. However, the old woman's figure swayed and moved, floating sideways. Her target was the black chi that had floated out after the young man in red had died. Pu. Ling Han suddenly delivered a stab with his sword. The large gorilla was shocked. He thought that Ling Han had already been struck by his spiritual attack. He had not expected that Ling Han had only been baiting him. The large gorilla hurriedly tried his best to dodge, but the sword still pierced his left arm. Gagaga. The old woman cackled loudly. She had already swallowed that streak of black chi, and instantly felt that she had become considerably stronger than before. Chapter 26:11 Fighting Luo fuming again. Chapter 26:11 Fighting Luo fuming again. Everyone was bursting with shock. 3 great elites had joined forces to attack Ling Han, yet the result was one attacker dead and another injured. This young man's battle prowess was a little too terrifying, wasn't it? Ling Han smiled at the large gorilla, yet there was no emotion in his smile. It was as if he was looking at a dead body. I have already said before, don't court death. He tapped out a finger and pressed down on the large gorilla. The large gorilla naturally knew that he had crashed into a hard wall, but how could he be willing to just raise his head and wait for death? With a loud roar, the means to cause spiritual damage was already unleashed by him, blasting out towards Ling Han. Wang. Ling Han felt a slight pain in his head. Even if he had already prepared himself, he had still been stung by this attack, though it was not very serious. It could not be denied that this kind of means was very astonishing. It was no wonder that so many celestial kings had fallen into the trap. For celestial kings, what could be more tempting than great strength? When the large gorilla saw that this attack was effective, he couldn't help but look pleasantly surprised. He put his 2 fists together, and pounded his fists down like they were a heavy hammer. Ling Han shook his head. Though this was effective on him, the large gorilla was only a 5th heaven celestial king. At most, it would only cause Ling Han a slight sting, but how long could this effect last? His finger paused slightly, but it immediately tapped down on the large gorilla with harsh, severe, and unprecedented power. Pu. Though the large gorilla tried his best to parry, it was completely ineffective. Ling Han's strike forcefully pierced through his forehead, and he died. Everyone was once again rendered speechless. Was this really a 4th heaven celestial king? Killing 5th heaven celestial kings was like slaughtering chickens to him. He was indescribably strong. Yet the old woman snatched the black chi that floated out after the large gorilla died. She released a series of cackles. The power bubbling inside her body filled her with incomparable confidence and greed. She wanted to swallow more black chi so that she would become stronger. She set her eyes on Ling Han. Though Ling Han had killed 2 people in a row with a single sword strike and a tap of his finger, she was unafraid. That feeling of incomparable strength also numbed her at the same time. Surrender your life to me. She flew out like a swooping bat, her arms spread apart. And while she was in midair, she opened her mouth. Wang. A sound wave blasted out towards Ling Han. The sound wave had not reached him, but a spiritual attack assailed him first. Because the sound blast was basically just a distraction. Ling Han felt a stinging sensation inside his head. He shook his head. The spiritual attack from the old woman was much stronger than that of the large gorilla just now, and she had only devoured the 2 streaks of black chi from the young man in red and the large gorilla. The increase in strength seemed to be extremely simple, so it was natural that one would become addicted to it. Ling Han smiled slightly. I allowed you to snatch 2 streaks of black chi in a row merely to see how far your strength would increase. Yet the end results have truly disappointed me. He stretched out a hand and pressed down on the old woman. Peng. The old woman instantly plummeted from the skies. She had been forcefully tugged down by an extraordinarily powerful force of gravity. She was astonished. How could one that had reached a height as she had be affected by gravity? The only thing that could affect her could be regulations. The grasp that this young man had of regulations far surpassed hers, and that was why a slight guidance of regulations was enough to cause her to plummet. Even if the old woman had already been affected by the black chi, which caused her to become irritable and bloodthirsty, when faced with an existence that was far stronger than herself, she still showed a hint of fear. Survival was the instinct of every intelligent being. As long as one still had intelligence, it would subconsciously take effect. The old woman shuddered. Judging from Ling Han's words, he had purposely allowed her to snatch the black chi. Furthermore, it had only been so that she could become stronger. What confidence! Not only did these words stun the old woman, the others in the proximity were also gaping, and experienced a deep feeling of confusion. No one knew the origins of the black chi. However, they knew that it could increase their spiritual attack power. In fact, it could increase their cultivation by close to a whole cultivation level. Who would not want this kind of good thing? Yet Ling Han was actually throwing it away like worn shoes. Who could accept this? Ling Han did not even spare a second glance. He merely pressed down on the air in the old woman's direction. Pa! The old woman was crushed into a mush of blood. He clapped his hands, as if he had done something that was negligible. Then, he swept an eye over the people around him. This is the price to be paid for provoking me. Everyone lowered their heads. This kind of person was definitely a dragon of the 9 heavens. How could they match him? If there were other celestial kings that were at the 5th heaven and above, they could still use their superior cultivation level to suppress Ling Han, but now? Ling Han was the strongest here. So what if there were countless celestial kings? So what if the black chi would affect their minds? Faced with absolute power, these people had chosen to submit. Yet Ling Han was not very pleased. He had initially planned to use the old woman to help him break through to the 5th heaven, but he had not thought that the old woman would still be so weak even when he had deliberately given her an advantage. 5th heaven wouldn't do it, and 6th heaven would probably be just barely enough. It had to be a 7th heaven celestial king that could pose a great enough threat to him. Ling Han did not barge into that final large tomb rashly. There were many 8th heaven and 9th heaven celestial kings in there. Furthermore, they also possessed the terrifying means of spiritual attack. Ling Han wouldn't dare to guarantee that he would not pass out if he was blasted by this kind of being. His spirit might even be directly crushed. He observed from the outside, hoping that he would be able to find some clues. 1 day, 2 days, 10 days. Hong, long, long. On this day, the ground suddenly trembled wildly, as if an earthquake was happening. Then, one figure after another shot out of various corners of the large tomb. Peng! One of them crashed down in the area near Ling Han. Looking at the extremely sorry state he was in, he had definitely not run out on his own will. He should have been forced or sent flying out here by another elite. Ling Han looked over, and couldn't help but look surprised, because he recognized this person. Luo Fuming, Luo Yang's father. When Ling Han had killed Luo Yang, Luo Fuming naturally wanted to avenge the death of his son, and had fought an intense battle with Ling Han. However, in the end, the latter had used the divine demon sword to send the other party into retreat. A 7th heaven celestial king should be an acceptable opponent. Ling Han's eyes lit up, and he strode forwards. Luo Fuming scrambled to his feet, a hint of lingering fear flashing in his expression. He was seemingly filled with wariness towards this large tomb, but his greed could not be suppressed. Gritting his teeth, he planned to enter the tomb once more. Wait! Luo Fuming had not even moved yet when someone stretched out a hand in front of him, looking like he was stopping him. Luo Fuming looked over, yet almost scoffed out loud. A 4th heaven celestial king. A mere 4th heaven celestial king actually dared to stop him? Luo Fuming humphed internally, yet moved without the slightest hesitation, pressing down a palm on Ling Han. This kind of dumb bug should just be crushed with a single strike. His palm strike landed, and Ling Han raised his hand slightly. As regulations clashed, countless ripples formed. This attack from Luo Fuming was instantly dispersed cleanly. Luo Fuming couldn't help but be taken aback. Though this strike was not his full power, it actually was still unable to suppress a mere fourth heaven celestial king. This caused him to recall a person, the great enemy who had killed his son. That man, too, possessed the ability to battle others superior to him in cultivation level. But that evil brat was a third heaven celestial king. Furthermore, he did not have this appearance and this aura, either. "Who are you? Why are you stopping me?" Luo Fuming asked darkly. The extremely terrifying aura of a seventh heaven celestial king surged out. Ling Han smiled slightly. "Luo Fuming, do you no longer recognize me?" "You are." Luo Fuming frowned slightly. He did not recognize Ling Han, but felt that the tone the latter used was familiar. "You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.